I wanted to talk about scaling crisis mapping. And there's a bunch of reasons I wanted to talk about it, but the main one is these guys. Those are the students who we're working with in Haiti. Willow and myself were there, and these kids are bright, fun, enthusiastic, great hackers. You know, they were teaching us stuff. But a couple of years back, they were in the middle of an earthquake. And these kids could have done so much. But they weren't part of the community responding to their own problem. So one of the reasons that I do what I do, one of the reasons I spend all my spare time crisis mapping, is because I believe that communities should have the tools and the connections and the abilities to help themselves when they can, when they're not too trash to. So that's my real reason why. So now on to the reason that a lot of us started this. The humanitarian system has been badly broken. Communities are not talking to each other. Processes don't work in the situations they find themselves in. Technology is inadequate for what they're trying to do, or inappropriate. So people produce beautiful technologies that don't actually map to the field. And the innovation processes were broken too. A lot of big organizations, we were seeing people with ideas not getting those ideas through to the places where they could be used, be trialed, and become useful. And some of the things that were broken, so I'm looking at 3 different parts here. So I'm looking at the crisis data, so what's happening when a crisis is happening, and just after a crisis is happening. What's happening in development data, so the data you use to improve the lives of people like those kids in Haiti. You know, get them connected to the grid, get them part of the hacker system. As soon as they get sign-ups on the places they can get paid for their work, great. But to get there, you need to deal with a whole bunch of disconnects. So crisis data, you were getting people from a distance away, working on the data, working from, say, HQs, who weren't actually connected to the people on the ground. They weren't connected to the responders, they weren't connected to the people who were affected. There was a disconnect between crisis response and the development people who were already working in the countries where those crises were happening. You were seeing lots of stovepipes. And when the data was getting through, it was getting through as data and overloading the people who were trying to make decisions. You know, these guys are not sleeping, they are absolutely exhausted, and their spare mental capacity is low. So you've got to deal with some of that bit of broken system. You've also got to deal with the breaks in the data itself. So we've got problems with formats. I mean, people are putting out crisis data in PDFs. People are cutting and pasting information, even numbers. They're cutting and pasting numbers from across the internet because they aren't available to them as numbers that they can just put in their systems and use. There's problems with getting the data. The open data movement's done a lot of work on opening up data for developing countries, and even data for developed countries like the UK. But there are still problems with access to things like Google Maps, where yes, you can access the map, but how you can use it and what you can use it in and how you can redistribute it is subject to copyrights. So there's problems there. There's problems with the coverage of the data. A lot of development data is old. Some of the responders I've spoken to say if it's less than 5 years, no, it's more than 5 years old, it's useless to us. A lot of the standard data is that old. If you're lucky, it's a few years old. So that's a problem. Problems in time, there's also problems in area. There are whole areas you can't get the data for through ordinary means, through traditional means. So by the time you've signed all the chits and signed off the people to go get it, everything's happened and done. And there has been a standards problem. One of the things about creating an entirely new field is that lots of stuff crops up in different places. You want that to happen. But unless you're starting to talk about the standards for those, it becomes very hard to compare them. It becomes very hard to keep transferring the things that work. Data sources just simply got ignored. The whole of social media got ignored for a long time. There are still sources which are not quite trusted. So the whole trust verification. And there were these big disconnects between the information that's coming out of data. So the things that were coming out of data mining and the knowledge that people had. The information that the responders already had, the people on the ground already had. And if you just asked them, would tell you. So loads and loads of disconnects. Not helped by some of the community problems where you were getting stovepipes in individual organizations. You still have stovepipes in organizations. Yeah. I mean that you have groups of people who work together and they're parallel to other groups of people working on similar problems in similar places, in fact sometimes almost side by side, but they don't talk to each other. It's the problem of 900 response agencies going into Haiti and only about 12 of them talking to each other. That problem. Lots of these. Imperialism, this sense that there's them and us. There are these guys in white hats who ride into a crisis, do something, and there are these guys who are being done to. Those hackers again. Those hackers are part of the response. They're not just people to be moved around. And actually finding each other's communities still, especially in Europe and unfortunately the UK, that don't know about each other. A lot of responders don't know about crisis mapping, don't know they have this stuff available. So lots of brokey stuff. Just a list of places I've been at trying to fix it, and basically just my, hey, I've not actually been an on-ground responder. I've kind of done some post-crisis stuff, but not actually been in the middle of it, trying to make sense. So credentials. So I'm going to look at where we've been so far in these data types, and then look at parallel fields that grew up at about the same time, and look at the differences between them, and look at what we can learn from them, where we can go. So this is not so much a talk about me, because there's a whole community here. It's a talk about them. So crisis data. So typical things we do. So this is a standard VTC workflow. This is one of the Standby Task Force's workflows. So you have an emergency team, the responders on the ground or the people in HQ connecting to them. And then you have some input teams. So the media monitoring team, they're looking through social media. They're looking for anything connected to the current crisis or situation. You also, so these are people looking out for information that people have just chucked as byproduct. You also have teams with direct connects. So you can send SMS messages to a lot of these systems. You can send direct reports in. There's a team that connects to them. Quite often you may need translation teams. So more often on SMS and media monitoring at the moment. But you still need translation, you still need to understand the problems of not just semantic translation, but also the higher pragmatic levels of what does lion mean in this context. Is somebody trying to tell me about a terrorist problem? Or are they just saying, hey, this guy's brave? Geolocation, always an issue. Finding stuff. Most of the information we get comes, if you're lucky, with the name of a place attached. Maybe a street, maybe a town, maybe just a vague area. But we need an entire team to go and disambiguate that. Part of the problem is that the registers that map from names to locations in many countries just don't exist, or they're broken. Or you've got name differences, so you quite often get spelling differences. I think Libya, one place had 4 or 5 different spellings depending on who had been through and what their own cultural linguistic background was. So Russians translate Arabic differently to French people to British people, in my experience in trying to actually disambiguate it. And then you just get the local names for things that nobody else knows. So for instance, Haiti, the diaspora helped a lot because Creole was a bit fluid. Then you have a team that once you've taken these messages coming through, worked out where they are, just checks, sanity checks that, puts that into categories, says yes, no, this could be actioned. Because what you want at the end of one of these is a map of actionable information, some things that you can do something about. Ushahidi quite often use that. Always got a tech support team around. Verification, in this case, this was actually, I think, the Kenyan election, so we had a whole bunch of people on the ground who were cross-checking the information in. And again, you have cross-checks because one piece of information isn't enough. You need at least 3 before you start saying, okay, this is probably a thing. We have had geolocations wrong, we've had the categories wrong, we've had the sources wrong. We've also seen deliberate disinformation, and that's only going to get worse. As people realize there are people watching all the streams, you're more likely to get people trying to either game the system, as has happened with people pretending to be from different countries, or you may get gaming for political or some other form of gain. So that's pretty much what a deployment looks like and what the VTC teams are doing typically when a crisis hits. And these are some of the other things you need to do. So again, when I said there wasn't the map information, there aren't informations on things like hospitals for a lot of countries. So this was going through Libya, working out where all the health facilities were. This was a deployment for the World Health Organization. Just knowing where things are. Again, back to Haiti. The military didn't know where the hospitals in the country were. They didn't know where to fly to go get patients or well, didn't actually know where to put them. So again, you've got all of this disambiguation problems there. Listening, the SMS. So looking at the information coming in. Tagging it. Working out whether it's actually potentially useful. Working out what the hell it says. Pashtun text speak is... I can't read Pashtun text speak. But it's coming in. If you're doing northern Pakistan, it's likely to come in. And it's like a mix of Pashtun and English and text. And there are no language lists. There are no ontologies for some of these languages. I think last time I looked, there was one SMS ontology. I think it was Belgian or French. Linguists, help. So if you're trying to do any sort of natural language processing on this, if you're trying to do any sort of NLP on non-English crises, you're going to have to start dealing with this, and you're going to have to deal with the fact you're working in multiple languages at once. So you've got linguistic problems, you've got even just the basic technical problems of dealing with the fonts for multiple languages, which breaks a lot of systems. Estimating. So this was Somalia, where the UN couldn't physically go in, but needed to know where the people were. So they needed to know where the aid needed to go. So this was a Christmas. Our Christmases tend to be pretty manic. So one of our Christmases, a whole bunch of us spent all Christmas putting little dots on a map. And we were mapping things that looked like shacks, where about 2 people could live, things that look like small houses, where you get maybe 2 to 4 people, and things that look like larger buildings. And literally just across the whole map. This was quite good because the system in it was giving every volunteer a tile, a small piece of image at once. And it was overlapping the tiles. So if you had 3 or 4 volunteers marking the same point, you were more sure. Verification, validation, big issue. Big issue, checking that your answer is correct and making sure it's not just off one person. Volume as well. That was a massive volume of imagery. But we're now getting volumes of messages that are way, way more than the human teams can deal with. So, geolocation, finding stuff. I talked about that one. Oh, and maps. So, Haiti before and after 2010 earthquake. That was the state of online maps before. That took days. And people all the way around the world just sitting, mapping where the roads were, and diaspora around the world explaining what the names were and where things were, and other teams who were then taking the maps and the satellite images and looking for tarpaulins so they could mark where camps were. So there's a whole bunch of satellite imagery is great.
Sarah, can I interject
Yeah.
one comment?
Yeah.
So what the OpenStreetMap team did here was completely build a new map in less time than it would take most governments to contract the job.
And actually, it took them less time than it takes most governments to actually write the contract that they're thinking about putting out for the job. Days. Literally days. Hey, if you want to come join me, carry on. No, keep interjecting. And analysis. So we have people looking at the overall situations. This is a UN situation map, but looks like Congo. Probably not. But you've got all of this information. Now try and work out what it actually means. I think this is the level at which many of the people at this meeting are starting to come in. You've got some of the information, you're assuming some of the information, you're now trying to make sense of it. So, and use. There is no point making a map if nobody uses it. We've stopped deployments before because nobody was using the outputs. So you've got to think, who is it useful to? How is it useful? What on the ground difference does it make having this? Oh, and by the way, if you're in an area that has conflict or different interests, what can you do to mitigate having negative effects from you putting up that map? So Libya, for example, there were 2 maps. There was the map that was built by the teams, and then there was the map that was published. And the map that was published a day later than the map that was built, so that any critical information there wouldn't make it out to people who would act immediately on it, and not in a good way. You also have to clean the maps a lot, so just making sure you haven't got personal information in there. It's amazing in a crisis how many people will put very personal information into their messages to you, or even just out to the world. So there's a whole bunch of security issues. So security of the people on the ground, your own team security, and security of the people using that data. Syria here, particularly strong example of that. It's not unknown for activists to be killed. So there's responsibility. There's responsibility for your outputs. Development data, so we've also got a lot involved in that. This is a typical workflow. So you've got this combination of machine scrapers. So a scraper goes to a web page and pulls information off that and makes it readable by a machine, makes it usable by a machine. You've got some automation. You've got a volunteer research team like the VTCs. And you've also got analysts who, in ACAP's case, they have very, very highly skilled analysts who are quite glad that they've got people who are actually going out doing all of the finding stuff work to help them. So you have this mix of people working together. And part of the weekend was working on an extension to this where we're starting to take text information as well as numerical information. So that's kind of cool. It makes a difference. That is one of the first things that goes out to the field with responders, so it's a good thing to have. Other issues. So open data. These are the 5 stars for open data. So you go from, okay, someone's put it online, but they haven't given you a license, so you don't know whether you can use it or not. They've got it online and they've got some structure to it. So you're not trying to dig stuff out of PDFs or cutting and pasting, through to it's actually linked. So again, this is you. Unfortunately, that is pretty much where most humanitarian data sits if you're lucky. So if you're lucky, it's structured. There's a lot of PDFs out there. So a lot of HTML pages, a lot of mess. If you're lucky, it's got a license. We're seeing proprietary stuff. We're seeing stuff that we have to go borrow readers to get to. This is not good. I'm hoping that you're going to be part of that solution. Cleaning. So we've also had events where crowds have come and helped clean up data. You get mistakes in data, you get obvious mistakes in data, you get problems. This case, this was an entire data set by USAID where all of the geographical fields were a bit vague and needed geolocating better. So the geoloc team went and helped. Standards. Just basic standards. Just like, okay, I scraped the data.un.org, the whole data set, and started analyzing what was in it. And one of my big beefs is country names, because you've got an idea of what country names are. And 7 or 8 different, maybe more, 8 different names in data.un.org alone for the Congo. Sorry, the DR Congo. And there's also a bunch of different names across different standards. So even if you've got a standard, they don't agree. So actually just standardizing, because if you don't do this, you can't compare data sets. I took a little issue with seeing the data set the comment from the UN recently that there were more people with phones than toilets out there. And I started pulling the data on mobile phone availability and open defecation. And if you try to compare them straight, country to country, the country names don't match up. That, I can deal with that. I have cleaners that can deal with that. Most researchers don't. A lot of the trick of this is making the kit available to people, is making it usable by people who don't have strong technical skills. It needs to be as easy to use as Microsoft Excel, if you can. But, all right, don't start on the Microsoft thing. And analyze. So just simple analysis. Again, if you can start matching things to each other, you can start talking about it. So these are maps of distances of some data in Sudan to water sources. You can start talking about how long people have to walk to go get water. You can start talking about that little red dot which seems to have a problem. So it's just saying, okay, there are decision makers, they need to make decisions, they need to make informed decisions. The data's there, the information isn't. And then use. So this is one of the ACAPS sheets. This is one of the things we worked on over the weekend. Okay, other places we've been. So knowledge sharing. So we have aggregators, like the Crisismappers network. The problem is that a lot of what's on those systems, a lot of what's in those groups isn't visible from outside. So unless you're a mapper, you don't actually see it. I'll show you an example in a bit. I got a bit fed up, so some of this is about me. I got a bit fed up that nobody had a catalogue of all the papers published on Crisismapping, so I started one. And people are gradually trickling in, but a lot of people don't know it's there. And getting people to actually add their stuff is not so easy. Just simple, the data stores. Just having lists of crisis data. Another project, the ontology project at the weekend, needed to know where the crisis data was. And I ended up snuffling around my drive for it. But I started up a CCAN node. I'm hoping that one of the other projects So CCAN is a data warehouse. So you can store data itself in different formats. And if it's in things like CSVs, you can pull that data directly using APIs. API is a way for one program to access information in another program. That's a bit simplistic, but basically that's what it is. And you can store lots of links to other data sets. So people can start finding stuff. We don't know where it is. And connectors. The Naval Postgraduate School runs something called Relief, otherwise known as Camp Roberts. So once a year, they get all the people, or as many as they can, involved on the ground in disasters. Or now the remote people like me are there too. Just to go spend a few days together, to try out new kit, talk to each other, to start building relationships before they actually find themselves in a disaster together. Part of that is the stovepipe effect again. There was a problem, I believe that's a problem still here, between military and NGOs. So the NGOs would turn up to a disaster and they'd all have their own thing. If you're lucky, they'd coordinate a bit. The military would turn up and there was a command problem where the NGOs weren't happy to be commanded by the military, to be told what to do by the military, and the military sure as hell was not going to be told what to do by the hippies over there. And it's dealing with that sort of perception, that sort of issue. Going from the hippies over to there, oh, to that's John, I know him. We know how to do this. And there's connectors like meetup groups, but not many of them. There's one in London, there's one in New York. There's not that much in the way of people just physically sitting, talking, and connecting up. There are some specializations. One issue that has come up quite strongly recently is that we're starting to see different types of volunteers and different specializations across those volunteers. And because there are no names for them and no descriptions for them, the way that they are dealt with is still one big mush. We need to start splitting some of that out. We need the person who's got 10 minutes occasionally to be different from the subject matter expert who's coming in or the hacker who's coming in to build. Sometimes they're the same person. Different times they're the same person, but we need to understand those roles. SMEM, social media for fire and EMS. Once a week, a bunch of people get on Twitter and talk about how they, as responders, use social media. That's a really nice community. So it's that sort of, okay, how do we talk about this? And training. As far as I know, there is one course on crisis mapping, how to do it, the type of tools you need to do it. And then there are training materials like this that are locked behind those firewalls. So a lot of the training isn't actually visible from outside. We don't have that sense, and I haven't seen formal courses yet, apart from this one course in Washington, DC, coming up in crisis mapping. Technology is great. We've got hackathons, we've got open source, we've got commercial software coming through, academic expansion. So basically you lot, plus friends. And some evolving. I have to put this up because I designed the damn thing. Okay. But at the same time as all this was going on, and I've described a very varied landscape that's not really connected to each other and not really visible to a lot of places, there were two other fields coming through. And one of them was data science, so big data. And the other one was citizen science. So big data. Big data has rocketed. I mean, there are big data specialists, data science specialists in most of the big companies now. There's a really strong community. There's a really strong set of almost newspapers for big data people. There are books, books, plays, whatever. But at the same time, as we've got to this point, these guys have established, and really established, And I was thinking about what the difference was. What did they have we didn't? One thing was that O'Reilly, the book publisher, took on big data fairly early. Ed Dunbill is the connector for them. Another nice guy. But they encouraged people to write books. They wrote pamphlets. They started conferences. They built all of the infrastructure so people could share. Aggregators like Data Science Central. This is relatively recent, this one, but others have been going for quite a long time. But people who effectively built industry newspapers for the whole industry. I mean, this stuff gets updated at least daily. You're starting to see specializations. Remember when I said that we were seeing these differences between types of volunteers and that nobody was really addressing that there were different ways to deal with people. Here it's all standardized. These are jobs. These are people embedded into large companies. Look, university courses. 2 there, a lot more out there. You're seeing maps of the tool sets that are out there. I've not seen these yet for crisis mapping. There are like some that are similar. We sort of say they're kind of similar, but there isn't actually that landscape mapped out. Free training, Coursera. If you get interested in data science, by the way, it's starting 1st of May. Just go on Coursera.com and you get a free, it's an 8-week lecture set. That's Washington, MIT, Stanford. They're all getting in on this. Not seeing that. I'm not seeing. This is just the top of the data science meetups list for New York. This goes on for another 3 or 4 pages. Remember I said I knew about 2 meetups around the world? This is just one place. Why isn't this happening? They're targeting their volunteering. Yes, we have some of that. We have the hackathons. So we're targeting the software that we're building. We're targeting some of the work like the USAID work. But I'm not seeing the same level. Citizen science. Citizen science is much more connected to the people on the ground. So this is the public laboratory. So these are people who think very, very, very hard about their end users being just anybody. So they build pieces of equipment that are relatively easy to use, that don't scare the horses. So, for example, when we're talking about UAVs, there are cultural negative associations with UAVs in many countries. They've just cut past that and they've gone for kites and balloons because they have, for most people, childhood association. You see somebody putting a balloon up, you wander over and talk to them, you say, hey, what's going on? UAV, you some countries you just run for it. They do things like make sure their outputs are visual, because most people deal better with visual information. So this is all about sparking communities all around the world. Communities are communities. So you've got things like Visuality who produce smaller communities. That's, oh God, hundreds of thousands of people, all doing small tasks as part of citizen science. And now we're starting to see a mixture between the community-based work and some commercialized work. So I am, one of my other hats, helping to define the field of sensor journalism. The idea that you can use sensors like that breadboard down on the right to start producing data sets like what was the air pollution at the Olympics. This was actually the Beijing Olympics. A bunch of people went out with individual sensors, mapped across Beijing what was going on. And that's the sort of questions. In the middle is the sort of questions, okay, who are these people? What makes a good one? Now, what's happening today? What could we do tomorrow? What do you actually have to do on your roadmap? We don't have that yet. So, where are we going? So these things are good. So we've established a field now. That's good. We don't have to keep saying, hey, I'm a crisis mapper, and I actually did have to once write a blog post that said, I'm a crisis mapper and I work for the UN, so what? We have a route. Because for a long time, if you were a talented computer scientist, there were very, very, very few ways for you to go and do humanitarian work. Even though your skills were needed, there's a route in now. We don't want to lose that. The academic communities like this one, they formed. The VTC communities, Standby Task Force, Humanity Road, Crisis Commons, they formed. The open source software, that's a healthy environment going on. The hackathon the weekend, people just sitting for the weekend, working on things that needed to be done, working together. There's been external effects, like the UN has gone from broadcast out to people over there, to listening as well, to gauging what people are feeling and doing. There's a long way to go, but things like CDAC, communicating with disaster-affected communities, has made a difference there. People who once had to analyse a situation with very, very little manpower now have surge capacity. They have extra people who can come in and help. We have social media analysis as part of that help. And we've also, as a field, encouraged other communities to start. We've encouraged things like the Data Science for Good communities to start. We've encouraged some of the hacker communities, the ones that weren't already there before we started. So good things, differences. We don't have the publisher sponsors. We've got meetings, we've got conferences, but there is not this big push from outside to make this thing work. We've not got as much focus on grassroots, on the people on the ground who need the help. We've still got a disconnect between European responders and European mappers. I know in Italy they've done a lot of work, Elena, and the SMEM is helping a lot in the US, and weirdly, a lot of places like Kenya, they're connecting. But Europe is still, there are still a lot of people who don't even know we're here. Formal training, that one course. Meetups, not many. Not pitching the case to companies. One of the reasons I think the big publisher sponsors got in on data science was because companies realized they could make money off this. Now our argument is probably that you can save money on this, because if you start preparing communities for crisis, if you give them better responses, you probably lose less overall. Reward systems for volunteers. If you have a volunteer working with you, you have to give back. If you're not giving money, you have to give training, credit, you have to encourage them in some way. That's another broken bit. That's another bit that needs work. Systems and services. We're seeing a lot of open source. We're seeing a lot of very similar systems coming up. We're not really seeing markets forming well. Knowledge curation. I mean, finding stuff about this, it's painful. And part of the grassroots is it ought to be easy to start a response. It ought to be possible that trained people, which you could train up fairly rapidly, have the tools that they can start and look after their own communities. Not there yet. Stuff we can do. So that was the doom and gloom. This is the, okay. So we've got stuff. We can catalogue it. If we have knowledge aggregators who want to make their information visible, we should go help. And there are people like citizen commanders who are trying to catalogue, and they're just not getting the resources from the community. We need to map what we've got. I mean, work on that Mendeley, work on the tool lists, map the companies, and do something with the bloody data stores. Whoops, that was my one swear per talk. I am still stunned that we don't have data stores of crisis information. We've been at this for 2 years, nearly 3 years, and working in this field for longer. Where are they? Why haven't we done it? Look at those other business patterns. Look at why those other communities got through faster and got to where they got faster. See if we can adjust those to what we've got. Look at what we already have, look at what's missing from that, look at what's unique about us that we work around. And so looking at some of those patterns, we need better connectors. We need to say, who are the stakeholders in all this? How do we talk to them? I mean, it's not just 3, 4, 5 people wandering around the world talking to them individually. It's who do we talk to? How do we talk to them as a group? What's the commercial case for doing this? It's not just an academic exercise. We need arguments for why people should do this in their communities. You don't scale by having a small number of worldwide groups just looking after crisis. You scale by having this happen at grassroots. You scale by having this happen within the emergency services. You scale by having this happen within communities. So we need to equip them. We need to embed the mappers into those organizations. We need those roles in companies, in large companies that just say, hey, I'm the mapper. We need to understand what those roles are, what those specializations are, and we need to work on those tools. We need to build tools that solve the problems they've got. We need to build tools that people can use, and that means non-specialists can use. We build beautiful things. I am as guilty as everybody of building beautiful things without connecting thoroughly to the person at the end who just wants something that does X. These are just starter lists. The point of me putting up these lists is to get you thinking and start your own lists. Or better, start a list. So anyway, so EU connectors. So connection through beer. Connection through beer is the best ever. So these are the basic list of people we think, I think should be talking to each other. It shouldn't be like this, where if I look at the jobs page or I look at the specific pages on Crisis Mappers, I get the login page. If I'm an outsider, that's just going to put me right off. I'm going to panic, think I'm not a mapper, I can't possibly go in there. It needs to be open. You need to work out who the mappers are, the stakeholders are, But also you need to do things like encourage meetups. You need to encourage places where people just sit and talk and work through this, and not just academics and not just responders and not just mappers, but just all together. The New York meetup is pretty good because we get bits of the UN talking to local responders, talking to academics, talking to mappers, talking to anybody who wanders in. But it's that sort of before the crisis happens. And looking at those specializations, so looking at the types of people that are starting to shake out. Turk sources, people who do small, relatively easy tasks, relatively simple tasks, like the clicking on buildings repeatedly. And I've deliberately put Turk sourcing in there because it's not necessarily bad to pay for people to help. If you're not giving them anything else back, there's an argument that actually Mechanical Turk is an answer. That's another argument. We can kind of argue that one out later. Specialist volunteers, we've got some really great specialists. We need them not sitting there clicking on the map, but doing it occasionally so they know how painful it is. But we need them building up the techniques. We've got community leads who aren't necessarily specialists, but that's a very specialist role. Designers, specialist roles. SMEM specialists, people who are embedded within the emergency services or embedded within the military, but people who understand this world and connect out to it. Again, this is just the first start at a map. This is not an answer. This is just, think about this. Think about what it means in your world. And then I'll stop talking and hopefully questions.